resulting from your calls in Crimewatch UK Update.
Hello, good evening. Well, it would have been nice if our 100th edition had been crowned with some very quick successes. It doesn't appear that that is the case. A fairly slow start tonight, perhaps not surprising because we started so late. Incident Desk, though, is looking reasonably strong. There's some very good information on the Wendy Speaks murder. A bit disappointing on the Larry Burt case, and a bit disappointing too on Photocall. But let's go into the details, Sue.
Well, our first case was the murder of Wendy Speaks in Wakefield. On the day Wendy was killed, several people had noticed a man hanging around near where Wendy lived.
Hello, I was wondering if you could help me.
And shortly after 6 o'clock, somebody working in the factory across the road from Wendy's house saw her talking to a similar-looking man at her front door. Wendy's body was discovered the next day after she failed to turn up for work. Now, Mr. Taylor, you've been taking the calls. In fact, I have to say you seem to have had the best response of all our cases tonight.
Yes, we've had well over 100 calls here and an equal number at the incident room. The thing that concerns me is that some of the female callers obviously don't want to give the name, but the information that they're given at the moment we can't do anything with, and we'd like them to ring back on the free phone number at the incident room, which will come up at the end of the programme.
And you can promise them discretion?
Absolutely.
Right, so please have the courage to come forward. Have you had much useful information on the shoes?
Well, the one call that we really need on the shoes is the vital call. The shoes were found at the scene, at the address, and we really need to find the person who left them outside that charity shop, and that call hasn't come in yet.
Right, and it's R.P. Ellen in Oxford Street, W1, that it says on the shoes. Anyone suggested who the man might be?
We've had several calls from prison officers, serving prisoners, a really large number of people suggesting people, and we shall work our way through them very quickly.
So you've got quite a lot of work there. Do you think you're going to find this man?
I'm absolutely certain we're going to find him. Time and patience I have plenty of, and I will find him.
Okay. And a quick look at his description again.
Yes, he's 35 to 45 years of age, 5'6" to 5'9", medium build, with dark hair, greying at the sides and balding.
You seem quite confident about finding him.
I am. I have no doubts about that at all.
Mr. Taylor, thank you very much.
Well, we're not quite so confident here on Photocall going through it, are we, Jackie?
Well, it's still early. Perhaps we'll get the call that we want. But firstly, Robert Hawkes. We've had sightings of someone similar all over the country. We wanted to speak to him about some deceptions with regard to high-performance cars. But if you know where he is now, please ring.
Blackburn Robert?
4 names suggested, none the same. Again, if you know him, please give us a call now.
Qudsi Ahmed, who was wanted in connection with a deception inquiry.
He's been seen in and around Yorkshire, which in fact does fit in, as you heard earlier, with what we knew already. So, but again, if you know where he is tonight, perhaps please give us a call before midnight.
Now, one of the cases does look much more promising. Tell us about that.
Yes, the double assault up in Bolton, unusual case. 2 callers have suggested names for both the man and the woman, and in fact 3 callers have just suggested names for the man on his own. So that looks a lot more promising, certainly.
Thanks, Jackie.
Well, David Hatcher, veteran of 100 Crimewatch updates, has the details on tonight's Incident Desk cases. David, first of all, the murder of Barry Stubbings in London. Did anybody recognise that man in the baseball cap near Liverpool Street Station?
Sadly, not certain at this stage, so what we do want to do is to identify him. We've had a dozen calls. One of them suggested it was a girl, but we do know it was a man. He was wearing a baseball cap, 5'8" to 9", 30 years, fair to blonde hair. We know it's a guy because he was seen with the victim in the Ploy Pillin Thai restaurant in Spitalgate just after that shot was taken. There's a suggestion too that he may be a male prostitute. If you do know him or you know anything of that man seen with Barry, please call us. There is a very substantial reward for information leading to a conviction.
Then there was the case of the young man who was stabbed to death in Manchester last February.
Yes, we've had lots of calls on that one too, mostly telling us where we can buy those hunter knives. We're more interested in, of course, who's lost that one. So anyone who's had a knife like that and hasn't got it anymore is what we'd like to hear about. Several names suggested on the picture there, a couple in particular which officers are very interested in.
Have you had many calls on that series of armed robberies on post offices in South London?
About 15 calls there. 6 names have been given, though, all different so far. One is very good with all the details, and we know that the individual is a violent person, so the officers are following that one up straight away.
Right. We showed a short reconstruction of an armed robbery at a jeweller's in Harrogate. In fact, there'd been 2 attacks there in the past 6 months.
Yeah, numerically, the best response. We've had 60 calls here to the studio, 30 to the incident room. Some very good information.
We've got enough, we've got enough. Plenty of time, BJ. Plenty of time.
One name has been suggested 12 times for that BJ clue, and again we've got some aspects linking to that name and address that links into other factors the officers have in their possession. So that one is really promising. A couple of suggestions on the gunman, but we'd like more obviously to identify that artist's impression of that creature.
Right. And finally, there was an attack on 2 market traders in a pub in Warwick just about 3 weeks ago.
Dozen calls there, several names suggested again. One in particular the officers are very, very happy about. So a lot to wait for on
Quite
incident.
positive, all that. Right, thanks.
Well, finally, the murder of Larry Burt. Larry lived in Ramsgate, Kent, and used to take a train to London every now and then, often cycling around the city. One weekend 3 months ago, he was killed in the East End by the edge of the River Thames. Deputy Inspector Michael, at first it looked really disappointing. I think you've only had about 40 calls so far, maybe edging up to about 50 now. There has been one quite interesting little group of calls there.
That's right. The volume of calls are somewhat disappointing, but we've had a few good pointers in the calls that have come in.
Some suggesting that there might be a gay connection in this.
That's right. We're not preoccupied with people's sexual preferences or their sexuality. However, we know that members of the gay community have provided quality information before on these major inquiries, which has played a substantial part in resolving the cases. So we would appeal to the gay community and anybody else who saw or met with Larry to please get in touch with us.
This is in the East End of London, probably the East End, around St Catherine's Dock on Saturday the 26th of February. In the reconstruction, we showed he had a bike. It was thought that he'd brought his bike to London. You've also now had a British Rail employee ring and say the bike was not on the train.
The train guard is fairly sure that the bike wasn't there, so in that case he must have caught the underground or a taxi, or even a friend must have given him a lift to Wapping.
Tell us about the home video that's been taken. There was a scout leader who's taken a home video in the area, in fact I think in the very street.
In St Catherine's Way a home video was taken, so obviously we're hopeful that if Larry Burt was in the area at that time, we will get something useful from that.
Let's hope so. Mr Michael, thank you.
And that's it for our 100th programme. Our lines are closing just about now, so if you can offer any help with tonight's cases, there'll be alternative numbers on the screen in just a moment. Do please call if you can.
Just before we go, there's been much talk in recent weeks on the subject of fear of crime. Newspapers, magazines, cinema and TV have been said to have increased fear of crime. You may be interested to see the latest findings of the British Crime Survey, which is the biggest and the best insight into crime in Britain. Fear of crime has not increased since surveys started in 1982. It really is worth saying, don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.
On Wednesday, Inside Story goes to work with Birmingham City's Karen Brady.
Blues supporters love her.
Yeah, 4-1 on, easy to beat them.
She can be ruthless. She's a sacker.
I think the Blues supporters' wives don't like her so much. But then again, they're very jealous of Karen.
It's very hard when people say, oh yeah, well, you know, she's just, you know, the bimbo, and that's how she's got the job.
Inside Story with the real manageress. Wednesday, 9:40, BBC One.
Now on BBC One, as a result of changes made to our evening,